Well, my name is Anne Crescini. I've been in Japan for 18 years, and I am a university professor in Fukuoka Prefecture, and I also do a lot of work with church and a lot of ministry stuff and writing and lots of different stuff. But I want to talk a little bit, kind of more of like a discussion, more than necessarily like me talking all the time. I kind of want to, especially we have two veteran missionaries here, and you could put some feedback into it too. But I wanted to talk a little bit about worldview today because this is something that's really, I think, is an important issue for missionaries in Japan to understand the link between worldview and culture. Because if we don't know worldview, then we're not going to be able to really properly minister, I think, to Japanese. So I wanted to just share a little bit of experience that I had in my life and how God has really worked in me and changed me in a lot of ways about this issue. This is my best friend, Makiko. She is from Kyoto, and she's a very, very, very Japanese. I mean, in Japanese they say Jun Nihonjin, like a pure, real Japanese. She loves Buddhism, she loves Shinto, she loves the traditional art. She's got a license in kimono dressing, and she just really loves Japan and loves the culture. We've only known each other for about 2 years, but we're like sisters, so we're really, really good friends. And Karen, you actually met her when she came to stay at your house. And God has used her friendship to teach me a lot about ministry and about the Japanese culture. And I wanted to share a little bit about that today. The first thing I want to ask you guys is, why do we come to Japan? Like, you guys have been here for more than 20 years, right? 20, 30 years, maybe a lot.
27, 22.
22. Okay? And, what's our motivation for coming here? I mean, why do we leave our comfortable countries to come to a land that, we don't know what kind of food is?
Because God wants the Japanese people to know Him.
Right. We want to give them, to teach them the truth that we have in the gospel. Like, why do you guys want to come to Japan?
Because it's such a need for the gospel here, and God has just led us to Japanese people.
Okay, good. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it's just looking at different countries and where I grew up. There's a lot of just international peoples that live there. And over the years, after meeting Japanese where I was in New Jersey, just wanting to go to Japan, and after learning about the spiritual condition, and the great need for Christ to be reached, and that it seems so open to the gospel, but yet seemingly we're not being reached. And that really was curious to me, and why is that?
Good. I think all of us, that's our motivation when we come here. And it's a great motivation. It's the greatest motivation, right? To want them to come to know the truth of Jesus. And I'm going to speak of my experiences and the things that God has taught me. I'm not saying that all people are like me or anything, but I had this unconscious, like, I have truth and you don't, let me teach you and listen to what I have to say, and I don't really care what you think kind of mentality. I didn't know that I had that. I thought I was loving Japan with all my heart. I thought that I was seeking to understand the culture, but a few things happened in my life to show me that I had this kind of almost like a spiritual pride, like a I'm better than you kind of mentality. And I wanted to share a little bit about that. And I want to challenge you to think, we come here to help Japan, we come here to teach them about the gospel, but I also think that we need to be open to what God can teach us through Japan, through the culture, and through our friendships with Japanese people. And God has used Makiko to do many, many great works in my life, and I wanted to share a little bit about that today. And I just want to give you one sentence that I want you to think about as I'm doing this talk. And when I say it, you might think it's like, sounds really bizarre, even unscriptural, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay? I can tell you that God used what my Buddhist friend taught me about the Shinto view of food to heal me of an eating disorder that I've had for 25 years. Okay? So that sounds really bizarre, that God would use that and that person in that way, but I'm going to explain in a little bit like why that happened and how that came about. Okay? Last year, 2 years ago, when I stayed with you in Osaka, we went to Kyoto together. Makiko's from Kyoto. And I really like Kyoto, I really like the culture, and I wanted to see it from a local's perspective. And at that point, God had just really been showing me he had started to reveal to me the importance of understanding the culture as far as reaching the Japanese heart. So Makiko took us to all the local spots, all the famous temples. This is Shimogama Jinja, Shimogama Shrine, which is a really famous shrine in Kyoto, and this is where she got married. And she was really excited to show me the place where she got married. And I thought that I was being a very, very great tourist and having a great time. And I didn't realize a lot of things I had been doing were in some ways upsetting her. And I'll tell you about that. We were in the car on the way home, and she looked at me and she goes, "Look, I gotta tell you something. And you might not like it, but I'm gonna say it anyway." And I said, "What?" She goes, "I know, I could tell every time we went to a shrine or a temple, you didn't want to be there. I could tell you thought you were being disloyal to your God every time we walked underneath the torii gate. Your kids looked uncomfortable, your kids were complaining about being in the shrine." And she goes, "You told me you wanted to come to Kyoto to see temples and shrines, but you don't want to go to temples and shrines." She goes, "I couldn't even show you the place I was married. I couldn't even worship because I just had to get out of there." She goes, "You really hurt my feelings, and I don't know why you wanted to come to Kyoto in the first place." And I was just like, I felt like God was just like stabbing me in the heart, you know. And the more I thought about it was, for the last year, she had been going to church with me. She had been reading the Bible. She had been borrowing books from the library about Christianity because she wanted to learn. Because she loved me, she wanted to learn what was important to me. And yet I did not have that heart to learn about what was important to her. I was just like, I had this like, it's not true, so I don't need to go. I don't want to be in that kind of idle kind of environment or whatever. And it really hurt her feelings, and it closed her to hearing anything I had to say about the gospel. She didn't want to hear it anymore, you know? And so that really, really spoke to my heart.
Praise God that she was open enough to tell you.
Right? It's very un-Japanese, isn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking I probably heard all kinds of Japanese feelings and never know about it.
No, you didn't. Yeah.
You know, and she, I mean, and I can tell you that conversation has totally changed my life and my ministry and everything how I view the entire culture. And I want to talk a little bit about that now. But I was very, in 3 hours we drove from Kyoto back to Kyushu, and for 3 hours she was just pretty much just like saying, you know, "I don't even know why you want to come to Kyoto because you don't want to be here." You know, it was just really like speaking to me, and I felt like God was speaking to my heart, like it was really showing me. And so that led to me wanting to learn the Japanese heart. Like, I want to know the Japanese heart. More than anything, I want to know the Japanese heart. I want to know the Japanese worldview. I want to know what they believe. I want to know what's important to them. And then I thought, why? Why do we want to know the Japanese heart? Why do we study about Shinto and Buddhism? Why do we study Japanese? What's our main motivation? What do you think?
Should be love.
It's love. Is it to share the gospel with them? Is it so we have this secret, this road to share the gospel? Yes, but that's not the most important reason. It's love. It's respect. We learn about their culture, we learn about their language because we want to respect them and show them that we value them and we value what they and that we love them, like you said. And of course, we can't do that. And of course, we can't share the gospel unless we have that love and that understanding as the basis of everything that we do. Okay, so don't think that I got to learn about Shinto and Buddhism, and I got to learn Japanese, and I got to learn about the food culture because I want to share the gospel. Of course, that's one motivation, but the main motivation should be just to love them and respect them and the things that they value. So that led to me just seeking the Japanese heart. Like, that's been my life quest for the last 2 years. I want to know Japan. I want to know what they value. I want to know I want to know what's important to them. And so about that same time, I started writing a blog, a bilingual blog, and I wanted to get blog content. So I'm like, I'm gonna do all these crazy things I've never done before, and I'm gonna write this blog. And at the same time, I was like, I'm gonna learn the culture, and I'm gonna learn the Japanese heart. You know? So I started, for example, I learned how to gut a fish. Didn't even like fish before 2 years ago. So Makiko and I went to a fish gutting class, and they taught us how to gut fish.
Fish gutting class.
Fish gutting class. It sounds cooler in Japanese.
What is this? This is
Sakana sabaki kyosutsu.
It does sound
Doesn't it sound cool? Sounds much better than fish cutting class.
Yeah.
But so we went to that, and I felt like I was learning something that was, like we were doing things together that she liked, and so we were getting closer too because we did that. And then so here's me looking all cool with the fish.
a bloody nose.
There's the
bloody,
fish.
bloody
It looked like some
parts.
kind of like murder scene when you're done. I mean, with blood everywhere,
Yeah.
this fish. So I learned how to gut a fish, and I ate sushi for the first time in my life last year. Lived here for 16 years.
Really? You never?
I'd only had the egg and the cucumber and
But
stuff.
you're from the mountains of Virginia.
I'm from the mountains of Virginia. You're right. So I just decided. I got to this point where I'm just like, you know what? I'm tired of all these. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't want to try this. I don't want to do that. I'm like, if I really want to know Japan, I gotta do what the Japanese people do. And I'm tired of going to someone's house and saying, I don't like fish. I don't like this. It's just such a pain in the neck,
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just gonna do what they do. So I went to the sushi shop and I said, I'll eat whatever you order. And they were like, seriously? Yeah, I'll eat whatever you order. And they started out nice, giving me stuff like salmon and shrimp. And by the end, they were giving me, I don't even know how to say it in English, kani miso, like the brain of the
Brain of the crab?
the brain of the crab, and then the fish testicles and all this stuff at the very end of the time. Shirako.
How'd you do with shirasu?
Mentaiko?
Shirashu is not so good. Mentaiko, I actually like mentaiko. But, you know what? I tried natto and I liked it. I've never tried natto before. And I just felt like God was freeing me of this, like, this fear of just things, and like he was freeing me so I could really experience the culture. And they have a phrase in Japanese, tabezu girai, which means to hate something without trying it. And I had been like that. I'd been like, oh, this smells bad and everything. But I'm like, I've never tried it. I'm gonna try it, and I liked it. I'm a quintessential country girl. I had such a hard time with Japanese food when I got here. You just not even believe it. I mean, I was miserable. And I finally have gotten to the point where I don't love these things. I don't go to the shop and order fish testicles on a regular basis. But if someone were to give it to me, I can eat it, which I think is a very important part of the culture, because food is something that links Japanese people together more than perhaps other cultures. And if you can show them that you like their food and eat their food, it's going to really, really, really impact them, I think. And I just got tired of going to someone's house. Oh, anything you can't eat. Oh yeah, I don't like this and I don't like this and I don't like this. It just got to be a hassle. So anyway, I did that. I made osechi ryori, New Year's food, for the first time in my life. Took 2 days to make this with Makiko. She did most of the making, and she was instructing me to do this. But I learned how to make miso soup for the first time in 16 years. Miso soup, which is so easy.
Basic, yeah.
Yeah, that's packaged.
Yeah.
Actually make it with the miso.
Take it
and
out of
grind
the,
it.
take it out.
And not only that, I learned how to make miso. Actually made homemade miso.
Oh, really?
I made homemade miso, like actually kneaded, the word koneru, knead.
Yeah.
I needed it. And all of this happened because I had that conversation just gave me an incredible desire to know the heart of Japan and the worldview and the culture. But the biggest thing that had the biggest impact on my life was in January I did a TEDx talk, TEDx Fukuoka. My blog that I started writing, the reason I started writing my blog was because Makiko can't speak English. And she was like, and I'd been writing a blog for 3 years in English, and she's like, I want to read your blog, you need to write in Japanese. And I said, I can't write in Japanese. And she goes, write it in Hakata dialect, and I'll be able to read it, and you'll be able to write it easily. So I started writing a bilingual blog in Hakata dialect, which is very slangy, and English, a bilingual blog. And it became really popular. It was like all over Japan. And as a result, I got these requests to do things like television and this TED Talk and stuff like that. So for 2 months, I'm like, oh,
That's why it says Hyojungo Hanasemasen.
hanasemasen. I can't speak standard Japanese, it says. But so for about 2 months, I was Skyping with my mentors for TED, and they were like, what do you want to talk about? And I'm like, I don't know. And then finally one day it just came to me. I was like, I'm going to talk about the link between culture and worldview and why It's important. And so I shared a lot about the experience in Kyoto with Makiko, and then how it's on YouTube if you ever want to watch it. I check it, but it's in Japanese. It's not in English.
And it's not even standard Japanese.
It's not even standard Japanese. But so I talked a lot about that. I talked a lot about the Japanese food culture, and one thing that I really learned is the difference between Japanese words rikai and kyokan, which is understanding and same belief or same system or same same feeling.
Kanjo no kan?
Yeah, so I have the same feelings. Like
Feeling linked
Acceptance.
together.
Right.
Together feeling.
right.
Conformity.
There's no,
Having the same belief system, I guess, in other words.
yeah,
And so
kinda.
there's really no way to translate.
No, it
It
doesn't
doesn't
work
translate
It doesn't
well.
translate well. So because Makiko and I have nothing in common. Nothing. She is Buddhist, I'm a Christian. She's from Kyoto, I'm from the mountains of Virginia. She doesn't speak English, just all kinds of crazy stuff. But somehow we became like best friends in the whole world, and somehow God was using that in my life. And the thing that really impacted me was food, the Japanese idea of food. And she started teaching me how to cook. I was a horrible cook. Like, she used to call me and be like, "You better not go buy those half-price potatoes at the supermarket today. I'm going to teach you how to cook." So she taught me how to cook. She taught me how to make miso. And as we were cooking, she taught me about the food culture of Japan. And in the Shinto belief system, food, all life is the same value. Animals and plants and humans, it all has the same value. So that's why that's one of the reasons Japan values food so much, because when they say itadakimasu, they're not saying let's eat. They're saying I'm partaking of life. I'm partaking of life, and therefore I'm going to value it. And they're saying thank you to the animals and the plants who sacrificed for them. They're saying thank you for the farmer who made the food, for the truck driver who brought it, to the person who picked it from the field, to the person who prepared it. All of that is in the word itadakimasu. It's all contained in that word. And so we would talk about this, and I realized like I had an eating disorder for 25 years. I didn't really value food. I would buy it and throw it in the garbage. You know how Americans are, right? We go to the supermarket, the store or the restaurant and get mounds of food, and then take home half of it and you put it in your refrigerator and you forget about it, and 2-3 days later you throw it away because it's very common, right? But one time we were eating together, and I left like about this much of an onigiri left. She got so mad at me. She was like, "Don't you value food?" And I'm like, "It's like one bite of rice." I was so upset. I'm like, "What is the one?" And I'm like, "What is the big deal about one bite of rice?" And that's when I realized it's all about, I'm not valuing life. I'm not valuing the people who made the sacrifice for that rice. So then I realized I started to value food more. Not because I think that all life is the same value. Of course, as Christians, we believe that human life is way more valuable than animals and plants. However, the idea of valuing food and taking care of it and thanking God for it and being good stewards really struck in my heart. And that I started to change how I looked at food. I started to think of food more not less like an enemy as much as I did, but more of like a nourishing thing, something that gives life to humans, And that change in my view, the Shinto view about food, helped me to value food more. And then I actually found myself I had overcome that eating disorder that I had my whole life. And that's something that my friend, who's a Buddhist, taught me about Shintoism, that God used. I'm convinced that God used me. And she knows I don't think that all life is the same value. She knows we're very clear about our beliefs, how our beliefs are different. But anyway, as I was doing this TED Talk, 2 things really struck in my mind. The first thing was that you must know your audience when you have a message. The first thing about giving a talk, a presentation, is that you got to know your audience. Who are you talking to? Right? They told me you can talk in Japanese or you can talk in English. If you talk in Japanese, the people who are in the presentation in the room the day of the presentation are going to understand you. If you talk in English, your talk will go viral all over the world a lot faster than once it goes on YouTube. And so I'm thinking, well, first of all, my life and my ministry and my heart is all about Japan. So why would I speak in English? And nobody would understand me, because who's gonna? If they don't understand me, it's not gonna touch their hearts, right? And second of all, I don't really care if my TED Talk goes all over the world. I just want it to be popular in Japan and to be seen in Japan. So I decided to do it in Japanese, and which, considering I'd never done it in English, is quite a challenge for me, right? So, knowing the audience, knowing what you have this great message, right? I had a great message. It was a great message. But if I didn't think about the audience, if I'd done it in English, that message would not have gotten to them, right? The other thing I learned is that the message might be good, but if the delivery is poor, then again your message is not going to reach the listener. You know, I don't know if you've ever watched TED Talks, but you don't read a script. You don't look at your smartphone.
They're incredibly polished.
They're incredibly polished, right? And I knew that when I got asked to do it. And I'm just like, I'm not going to do this half-heartedly. I'm going to work my tail off and do a great job. So, you know, but I have seen people do TED Talks looking at their smartphones or whatever. And it's really just makes me not want to pay attention.
Yeah, it takes away from it.
It takes away from the power of the talk, right? So how you speak, your voice, your gestures, your stories, your connection, your interaction with the audience. You know, you can have a great message, but if your delivery of it is poor, then it's not going to reach your intended audience. And God showed me that that's an analogy of the gospel, right? We have this great, perfect message, this message that's life-changing. But if we don't take into account our audience, and if we don't take into account how we deliver it, it's going to be useless and it's going to fall on deaf ears, right? So you can't share the gospel with the Japanese like you share the gospel with Americans in the States. You can't share the gospel with them like you would share it with, even with Europeans or Chinese. You have to take into account, who are the Japanese people? What do they believe? What do they think about things? And you have to learn that so you know how you can best deliver that message of the gospel to them. Second of all is our delivery. 3 years ago at RJC, Makoto Fujimura, this famous artist, you guys were there, right? Talked about, oh, you weren't there. He talked about how to share the gospel. And he said this sentence, he said, the best way to talk about Jesus is to not talk about Jesus. He goes, don't talk about Jesus, the Japanese, they don't get Jesus. And I was just like, what the heck is he talking about? This guy's a nutcase. You know, I was really turned off to him. I just did not like him at all. And I thought, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. You know, the whole gospel is about Jesus, right? So I went back to Japan, and I was just thinking about this crazy message this crazy guy gave at RJC. And I went to a hot spring trip, an onsen trip with two of my good friends, these two, Yoshika and Chie. And I've known them for maybe 6 or 7 years. And Yoshiko lived in America when she was young for 7 years. She's fluent in English, does yoga, teaches yoga and Pilates, kind of a little bit new agey in her beliefs. She is just a traditional Japanese, you know, just loves her family, loves work, and, you know, goes to the shrines and temples, whatever. So anyway, we were hanging out the onsen, and she looks at me and she goes, An-chan, you're going to go to heaven, right, when you die because you're a Christian. She goes, what's going to happen to me? And I was just like, you know, that's the first time in my 16 years a Japanese person had ever asked me a question like that. So I did what I think we should all do. We don't say our opinions, we say what the Bible says when people ask us questions like that. And she looked at me and she was just all sad, and she was like, that's just really sad. I really wanted to go to heaven with you. And she was just kind of just sad. And she wasn't angry, like saying, like a lot of Americans would be like, how dare you say it? I'm going to heaven. And then Yoshiko had a couple glasses of wine, and she looked at me and she goes, you want to share the gospel in Japan? I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to tell you the best way to share the gospel in Japan. Are you listening to me? And I was just like, yeah. She goes, first of all, don't talk about Jesus. She goes, we don't know who Jesus is. You come up to us and you say Jesus loves you when you have no background and you don't have any relationship with us. And we don't have any idea what that means. She goes, you show me the love of Jesus. You help people who are hurting. You serve people. You show that love of Jesus, and then you earn the right to talk about this person, Jesus. And she goes, that's the way. She goes, there's hurting people all over Japan who need your Jesus. And if you just learn how to deliver that message properly, people are going to come to Christianity in droves, she said to me. And I was just looking at her going, I was looking at it, and it was just really fascinating because she said the same thing Makoto Fujimori said. He's not saying never talk about Jesus ever. He's saying that the concept of Jesus, even though America is falling away from the gospel, the concept of Jesus is known by most of the culture, right? People know who Jesus is.
I think he's a good man.
Right, he's a good man, and he's the center of Christianity. Japanese people have no idea who Jesus is. No idea. And so if you just go up to them and say, well, Jesus died for you, or Jesus loved you, they're just going to be like, huh? So that was a really powerful conversation that I had with them. And God really used that to show me that it's really, really, really important to seek to understand what's the best way to deliver our wonderful message that we have. What's the delivery that we have? What's the best way? And I think for me, everybody has a different calling. My calling is to reach people who would never think about going to church. Is to reach people. I had coffee yesterday with a transgendered reader of one of my blogs, and he was telling me about what it's like to live in Japan as a transgender person and how hard it is. Those are the kind of people that my heart, if people are called to discipleship, others are called to coffee ministries, others are called to Bible studies. My calling is to reach the people who don't even think about going to church. And I have a platform to do that through my blog and my writings that I do, because I have a lot of people who follow it who don't know anything about Christianity, right? But all of us as Christians have this responsibility, I think, to learn about the worldview. And one thing that's really, really, really important is knowing, well, first of all, you really need to have friends that are not like you. You really need to surround yourself with friends who can teach you things. People who are just like you are just going to be just like you. You're going to talk about things, and you're going to, of course, we need fellowship as Christians. We need these kinds of gatherings. We need church. Because we need to be built up and we need to grow. But we also need friends who are not Christians. We need friends that can teach us about the culture, who can help us see things from a different perspective, because they have a different worldview, so we can see things from a different perspective, right? So for the longest time I thought, gosh, Makiko and I, she's not a Christian. Can we really be that good of friends? She doesn't understand the most important part of me. But I can tell you that no one in my life other than my husband has ever cared about me as much as she does, or has ever thought about me, or served me, or cared about how I'm doing as much as she has in my life. She has. This is one of the corrections she did of my blogs, of the grammar. She reads my blogs and she corrects all my des and ne's and ga's and wa's that I always make mistakes when I'm writing. I've written 123 blogs, and she did this for almost every one of them for me.
Did what?
She
Black
Yeah,
squares.
You can't see it? This is the corrections to my blog.
Wow.
Can't see it?
Yeah, she just corrected it.
She wrote every sentence out. She looked on the screen and she wrote every sentence out by hand of things that she did. Just one way. It's dark, yeah. Doesn't lost the impact.
Yeah. It's a presentation. Yeah.
But the thing that I'm really struggling with, and actually I talked with Dan about this. I don't know if he told you, but I was really struggling with this whole culture and religion concept in Japan, because the Japanese culture is so intertwined with religion. You can't really separate it. I want to know, as a Christian, how can I love this culture deeply and respect this culture deeply, but still maintain loyalty to my beliefs and keep my beliefs? Like, what's that line? It's something I really am seeking after right now. And about 2 months ago, this TV station called me and asked me to do this show at a festival carrying omikoshi, the portable shrine. And my initial response was, "Oh, that's Shinto. I'm never gonna do that." And I ended up not doing it, but I want to leave you a little bit of backstory. So Makiko is also my manager, because I've got to the point where I need a manager now. So she's also my manager. So she was just like, she was like, oh, you should do it. It's great. It's culture. And I said, well, it's really Shinto, you know. It's like you're carrying the Shinto gods around town. And she goes, nobody thinks that. She goes, no Japanese person thinks that they're carrying the gods around town. She goes, for us, it's just culture.
It's a festival.
It's a festival. And I said, yeah, but if you look at the history, the gods actually enter into the carriers of the omikoshi and actually enter into their bodies. I said, you know, because you don't believe it to be religion, does that make it not religion? You know, and so then that led me on a journey where I started reevaluating everything how I see this culture. I mean, what is my standard of determining what I participate in and what I don't? Why do I not carry the omikoshi, but I let my kids do karate, which is also very based in Shinto? Or why do I not do the bone dance, but I let my kids throw beans at the devils, at the oni every March? Because to me, they're all based, every single thing, every single event and ceremony in Japan is based in Shinto Buddhism originally. Even the New Year's food is food that was sacrificed to the gods. That's why they made the New Year's foods. Am I not going to do that? And so God just really sent me on this journey and He used this thing with the omikoshi to really get me thinking and trying to figure out, you know, especially because I'm out in the media now. People are going to be watching me. My church is watching me. Other Christians are watching me. Non-Christians are watching me. You know, what am I going to do with all this? You know, and so for 2 days, Riz and I and my husband and I prayed about it. We talked to different people about it. We, you know, and all my Japanese friends were like, "It's not religion. It's culture." You know, and Makiko was like, "If you don't do this, people are going to think you're rejecting culture. People are not going to understand. You know, and you're not going to get any more requests to do anything because they're going to be, oh, you're a Christian. It's too much trouble." You know. But then other Japanese people were saying, "Oh no, the Japanese people understand if it's your religious views. Don't worry about it." And so I felt all this turmoil inside of me, and I eventually, and I talked to my husband a lot, and he was just very like, you know, omikoshi is not the same as karate. It's not the same as throwing beans at the oni. He's like, it's different. You're actually carrying the gods. You're participating, and you're carrying the gods around. So I eventually said no to the TV show, and they understood. They were fine, and this is where I got to this point with Makiko. This whole Dikai versus Kyokan. You know, we didn't agree, but we respected each other's beliefs, and we sought to understand that. You know, and so since then I've been on this journey to figure out, to look at each aspect, each ceremony in Japanese culture. You know, the bone dance and the ceremonies, and you know, do you go to the shrine? Is it okay to go to the shrine? Can I go into the inner shrine? Can I just go in the outer shrine? Do I go to a funeral? And if I do go to a funeral, what do I do there? Or, you know, all of these different things. I'm on this journey to figure out, because, and this year Daniel Kikawa talked at RJC, and he's this, I would call him a hyper contextualizationist. It's like he really contextualizes way more than the average Christian missionary, I think. And his words really spoke to me a lot too. And so the line between figuring out where culture and religion is, I think as Christian workers in Japan, it's very important. Not only for what we teach Japanese Christians, what they should be doing, but also for ourselves, like the witness that we show. And that's something that, in particular, I have to think about, because I'm the church council at my church. And for example, one day, like I love going to this shrine in town. Because I just like the view. I just go there as like a sightseeing type thing, and I like it. And one day I posted a picture on Facebook about it, saying, "Oh, I like this shrine, kono tokoro ga suki," or something. And people were like all over, like saying something to me. You know, sugoku iwareta. What are you doing, like posting a picture on a shrine like that on Facebook, saying you like it? You know, and they weren't saying it to me. They were saying it behind my back, and they were talking to each other. Oh, Elaine's going crazy, and she's turning Shinto, and you know, and it really hurt my feelings. And it hurt my feelings, but it also made me realize that, you know, our actions not only affect how Japanese people view Christianity, but how other Christians see us. And honestly, personally, my belief, and you guys can tell me how you feel about it, is there's such a wide range of how people do stuff in Japan, Christians here. Some people will go to funerals and participate and give the incense. Other people will go and just not do anything. Other people don't even go. You know, some people will do the omikoshi and do the bon dance. Other people won't. Some people go to the shrines and to the home den, the inner sanctuary. Other people don't even go to shrines. Personally, I think that those are kind of things that it's up to the individual believer in God to make their own decision, and I don't think we should judge people for their actions. That's how I feel about it. But it's a very important issue, I think, that we as Christians need to think about and talk about as we seek to live here, because if we try to avoid Shinto and Buddhism, we cannot live here. You might as well just go home and not think about being a missionary, because it's impossible to avoid Shinto and Buddhism.
Yeah, because most people I meet, they'll say that they're Buddhist, in the generic sense. But of course, they don't do anything about it. But then I met a young man last week, and he said, yeah, my mom and my dad and my younger sister are Buddhist, but me and my older sister, we're not anything. We're not Buddhist. But he clearly said, we are not Buddhist. That's the first time I've heard a person say that.
Is he young?
31.
I find the younger generation is more, when they say they're Mushukyo in general, they don't really mean it. They mean they don't believe in God, but they still do all the rituals connected to Buddhism.
He doesn't
do
Right, right. But the younger generation is changing. They're really they don't believe in anything. They don't even go to shrines or temple. They don't do hakamai.
But he leans towards Christianity.
He does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and
When
so...
you have a vacuum, something's going to fill it.
Right.
That's right.
And one day I was really in the midst of this, and Dan, your husband Dan, made some really profound comment on Facebook on someone else's post, and I'm like, I need to talk to Dan about this. He's a wise guy,
Wise guy is right.
It was just a really someone made some kind of comment about some very extreme comment about the culture being Shinto Buddhism, we can't do that, or blah, blah, blah. And Dan just gave us a very long, diplomatic, polite, biblical, just awesome response. And I'm like, I'm going to call Dan and ask him about this question because he's smart and he's got a good view of it. And, her husband Dan was actually Buddhist for a couple years.
Not 3 years.
And so he was telling me, because I don't think that we need to think that just because Buddhism and Shinto are not truth, that there's not aspects of truth and things we can learn from them. Just like I learned about the food culture from Shinto, Dan was telling me there's lots of Buddhist thinking that he respects and he finds.
And also when you say Buddhism, there's varieties
Right.
of Buddhism, because if you look at something, I think it's Jodo Shinshu, and you look at what Shindan brought over from China, he got it from the Nestorians. So there's parts of that kind of Buddhism
Right,
that are very Christian.
right.
Yeah,
The whole
almost down to
idea-
the Ten Commandments.
In I think it's Jodo Shinshu too that believes in the idea of the I forgot. It's the idea that you need to be saved by an outside force. You can't
Right,
save
yeah,
yourself.
that is Jodo Shinshu.
Hongan,
Yeah.
Hold
Wide,
on.
wide road Buddhism, kind
Yeah.
of, in English.
Yeah, but
Jiriki,
Shindan.
Tariki Hongan.
Tariki, yeah,
Tariki
so.
Hongan.
Yeah, because if you read there's a book called Shindan and the Apostle Paul, and it's interesting because this author paralleled Shindan and the Apostle Paul, and he, Shindan got so much of his stuff from Christianity.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising that the Buddhists don't know that.
And Makiko is way more willing to listen to my stories about Jesus now than before. Way more. Like she tells me all day long, she's like, I'm not interested in religion, but then she'll ask me all day long questions about Christianity. Like in the next breath, she'll ask me about the afterlife. It's really hard. Honestly, it's hard for me to have such a close friend and knowing that the reality of what I believe as a Christian. And she'll just make these comments every now and then that just cut at my heart. Like she was grabbing me one day, she was giving me this big hug, and she goes, do you think if I grab hold enough that God will let you take me to heaven with you? And it's just stuff like that. It just like cuts into my heart, And but ultimately we have to trust God, not us. We can't save people. Our words and our actions are not gonna get people into heaven. It's the people seeing Jesus and how we live that life. We don't need to talk constantly about Jesus, Jesus, Jesus if we live a life that shows that where Jesus is just overflowing in our existence, our very existence, you know, and I really think that this whole, that as much as possible, that we Christians need to really try to immerse ourselves in the culture and learn the language and learn the culture, and learn the food culture, and learn the religions, and you know, that doesn't mean, you know, God is not going to strike us down because we visit a temple, you know. And I think for the longest time, I felt like I was being dishonest, and of course there's that whole spiritual aspect you have to take into account. Like I'm not trying to, like, you know, make light of the spiritual battles and that issue about going to temples and shrines. Of course, you have to always take that into consideration, you know? But the reason that my blog has become popular, and the reason that all of these people who don't know anything about the gospel are like my stuff, is because they see that I love Japan, and that I'm seeking that heart of understanding. And I think if we all have that heart of understanding, it's going to really, and you know, I thought I had that all along. And one day, do you remember that song Toire no Kami-sama? It was popular about 7-8 years ago.
The song, no. The expression, yes.
There was a song on the Kohaku Utagassen, the end of the year, Red
White show.
And it was called Toire no Kami-sama, the God of the Toilet. And I remember my husband and I were watching it, and I remember laughing. God, there's a God in the toilet too. Are you kidding me? There's gods everywhere in this country.
That one, yeah.
You know, and I was like, and I was making fun of it on Facebook, and I was like, you know, just like, you know, oh, this is the silliest song I've ever heard. And about 2 months after I did my TED Talk, Michael and I were cooking dinner, and she goes, there's a song I really want you to hear. She goes, Japanese Worldview is entirely contained in this song. And it was a Toire no Kami-sama song. And I was just like, my heart was just so convicted. And I realized I hadn't even listened to the song. I was making fun of it just by the name. And I listened to it, and I felt like I was going to throw up. I was so convicted by God. Like, it wasn't really even about a Toire no Kami-sama. It was about what the girl's grandmother who had raised her had taught her about life. And they believe there's a superstition or a belief that there's a God in the toilet, and so you have to clean the toilet and make sure that it's clean every day, because you don't want to make the God of the toilet upset. And it was just more about like how your grandmother teaches you stuff when you're a little kid. It's very similar to what our grandmothers teach us. You know? And I was just so convicted about how I thought all along, I thought that I was in Japan to love the Japanese people, the gospel, to share the gospel. But I wasn't really seeing anything. I had this Western worldview that was over like covering up the light of the gospel. You know, and it was that worldview that was not a Christian worldview. It was the Western worldview, and that's something we need to separate. You know, we keep our Christian worldview and we ditch our Western worldview, because Japanese Christianity does not need that. They need a Japanese church that they are comfortable with. You know, and so I started to learn how to play the shamisen. I started taking shamisen lessons, and hopefully one day I can learn how to play a gospel song or a sambika, praise and response on the shamisen, right? So I just want to ask you guys, especially you guys, because you've been here a long time, what have you experienced? Like what kinds of jewels have you learned from Japanese worldview or from your interaction with Japanese people that have helped you to really understand the Japanese heart, to understand how they think?
I think lately, you know, having gone back into studying Japanese, when you study Japanese and you tell your Japanese friends you're studying Japanese, of course they'll say you're very fluent, right, like from word one, but if you study Japanese, the relationships you have with people are vastly different.
Right.
Because if like I work with Japanese who've returned from overseas, but I have found that all their event posts are all in Japanese and their events are all in Japanese. And I've had other missionaries that come back and forth say, well, why don't they post this in English? And I'm like, it's not about you. It's not about the event being posted in English. And short-term missionaries get frustrated with this too. And you have to realize that you have to embrace the Japanese language no matter how much it frustrates you and how much you feel your inadequacies as you study, because there will be these people that will be willing to interact with you because you've taken the Japanese language by the horn and you said, I'm going to persist. And whether you become fluent or not is not the issue, but they see
It's that
the
effort.
they see the effort, and they see it's the love and respect thing that you were talking about earlier, because they know their language is hard. But if they see that you're studying the language even after years of being here, their care for you and their wanting to be with you will vastly change.
And I can tell you too that like I wrote a blog. I wrote 11 books in English about Japanese culture, textbooks. I wrote a blog for 3 years, and none of my Japanese friends could read it, hardly. But as soon as I started writing blogs in Japanese and books in Japanese, it took off all over the country. People want to read it because this is Japan. We need to learn Japanese, right? I mean, but it takes a long time. You know, like you guys.
It takes a lifetime.
You guys are
You
gonna
never
come
get
over.
done learning.
You never get done.
Japanese say compliment me, and I say, well, Mada Benkyo Shu, Isho Benkyo Shu. I'm still studying. I will be studying the rest of my
I
life.
say shinumane benkyo
Yeah.
shinakereba narimasen, which is a very complicated verb, but it's
Yeah.
like I must study until I
die.
die.
Yeah.
And that just
I
sends
don't
them off
say
in
the
the
must. I
laughter.
just say I am. Whatever. But I want to. Can I add to that a little bit, and then I have a point of my own that's separate. The other cool thing about learning language or learning anything else, where you're putting yourself in a subordinate position, you're saying to these people that are here, teach me.
Teach me.
You will build relationships you cannot build any other way.
Yeah.
Come as a learner, be a learner, always be a learner.
Be humble.
Be humble.
Yeah, even if you're here
That shows
60
respect.
some odd years, like we have one missionary, our mission group that's been here 65 years.
Stella?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like she is still of that heart that she's a learner.
Yeah.
And I can say too that like Makiko is the best friend I've ever had in my whole life, and she can't speak a lick of English. A lick. I mean, a lick. Not even a little lick. A half of a lick. I mean, she's and God. I would not be where I am in my life. I would not be doing anything I'm doing right now if it weren't for my friendship with her and the way God used her friendship, my friendship with her. And the only reason that we're friends is because I can speak Japanese. So just to show the value of the language right there.
My other point. Earlier you said something about, praying about which things to participate in and which things not to participate in. And I thought your examples were interesting because they were, in those situations, you were coming to different conclusions than I did when I basically asked a lot of the same questions. And it brought to mind that the situation is important.
Right.
Who you are, where your walk is with God, and the people you are with that are inviting you to do something, what is the best witness for them? Is it participating because you care, or not participating in order to send the message of what your belief system is? Only God knows.
Right.
So let me share just brief 2 examples that happened a month apart.
Okay.
So they were very clear in my mind. I'd been here a year and a half, I think, at that point. I was in Japanese language school, and it was July 7th. No, I've been here, about 2 years, I guess, a little bit longer, something like that. I was in the advanced class at that point. Our school had 4 classes, 4 levels, and about 20 people in each one or something. And July 7th, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is called Tanabata. It's this, I don't even know where it came from,
It's
goofy
the Star
holiday.
Festival.
Star Festival. They have this story about these 2 stars that are actually people that were in love, and
It's
they
how
were-
Japan started.
Yeah, it's like this fairy tale, and it became these stars. Okay. Now, they celebrate by breaking off bamboo branches and standing them up like they're little trees, and then they decorate them, and they write prayers on these pieces of pretty paper and hang it on the tree. That's the,
You see them as prayers? Because for me, it's more of just a wish.
Well, yeah, I was trying to,
That
that's
nuance,
exactly trying to figure out the nuance. And I'm in language school, right? And so they're teaching this as culture. right? So it's 1 hour right before lunch. They said, okay, clear off your desks. We're not going to do bank. We're going to do this other thing. And the lowest class did decorations, and the other three were expected to be. We have enough writing skills that was okay. Here's your sumi ink and your brush, and spread newspaper over your desk. And to them, it was a craft exercise, right? And there's like, okay, pick out your pretty paper to write your onegai on. Okay, well, is that what's your prayer? Whoa, it's splitting hairs here, right? So I just, as a student, I have to ask the teacher questions, right? I'm sitting in the classroom and sumimasen, kirimo, kono onegai te iu imi wa? You know, because they just explained about the lovers and the stars, which seems like it has nothing to do with this thing, right? So I was like, I understand, you know, I said, what's the meaning of this? And she launches into the story again about the lovers. I said, I got that part. But this thing, I said, okay, let me ask it a different way. Who are you asking to, praying to, wishing to? Who do you expect to answer this? And she paused like she'd never thought of that before in
no
her
one
life.
asks that question.
But she's a teacher. She's got to come up with an answer. She knows I'm a Christian. I haven't been, pushing it at anybody, but she knew where I was coming from. She understood why I was asking the question, or suspected, right? And she goes, Sora no kami-sama? With this big question mark, like she didn't know.
Out of the sky.
God of the sky? Maybe? She was like really stuck. And I said, okay, kekko desu. And she's karimashita.
Yeah, because you don't want to shame the teacher.
I decided I'm going to just pass. Well, no, I did not just that. I didn't push the issue, but at that point, that was enough of an answer for me that I felt that the Holy Spirit was saying, don't do this. Okay. And the teacher respected that. She understood that she could tell I wasn't going to like her answer when she said it. So instead of making a big fuss, I just didn't do the writing, and I was looking at other people, complimenting them on their handwriting, whatever, just being there with my classmates. I didn't really know how it was going to turn out, but during lunch hour, the witness opportunities were unbelievable. I didn't even expect this to happen, but during lunch hour, the classes mix. Everybody's hanging around and getting their food and talking, and everybody's conversation was, what did you write? What did you write? What did you write? And I said, I didn't write anything because I only pray to the real God. And there were a couple Christians, Chinese Christians in the school too, and they're like, ooh, I didn't even think about that. I was the only one in the school that didn't write anything. And I don't know, it had an effect. Now, that was one story. It got longer, way longer than I thought. The other story was a month later or something. A volunteer Japanese class that I was in was going to do Bonodori, and they were bringing yukata for all the students and stuff like that. And I just asked the Lord, what do I do with this? And I heard a clear, it's okay, fine, and I danced and I had a great time, and I did not feel any spiritual oppression or anything, and it was great. It was just culture, but for you, the Bonodori body. So I think my point is the Holy Spirit will teach us if we will listen to Him.
My thing is, I don't know. I'm still not sure. Honestly, like I don't know what bothers me, and I don't know why this and this. Like where is the standard where I make my decisions? Because up until now, I feel like it's been very tekito, very random. Well, we'll do this, but not this. But then Mike asked me. She goes, "Why?" She goes, "I don't understand why you'll do karate and you'll do tanabata and you'll do all these things, but you don't do the bonodori." She goes, "That doesn't make any sense to me." She goes, "It's all the same." She goes, "I want to know the standard you are having to make these decisions." And that was the first time in my life I was like, well, you know what? She's right. What is my standard? I don't really think I'd ever thought about it. I'd never prayed about it. I'd never talked to Riz about it. We just kind of randomly well, this is a little bit Shinto, so it's okay, but this is really Shinto. So, that really Shinto or halfway Shinto, where is that standard there? And I think it's something I'm still honestly, I'm not really sure. But it's something that I need to figure out because I'm a lot more out in the spotlight than a lot of Christians are.
Yeah.
And so I need to have a clear stance on these issues.
Yeah, before August comes.
Before August comes and all the festivals and everything. And,
July and August.
But and then there's the issue where, well, my husband and I, we have to have the same spirit, we have to have the same heart. Like, what if he thinks something, which happens sometimes, he's definitely against doing this, and I'm
Because
thinking,
you've got
well,
to give the girls a standard. so
right,
that-
we have to give our
they
kids
get
standards,
confused, wishy-washy, yeah.
right? I don't want this wishy-washiness for my kids, and
Well,
so,
Because, in workshops for the Japanese fraternities about funerals are all over the map as far as the advice they give to the young people coming back dealing with Obachan and Oji-chan's funerals. It's like, but the bottom line goes down to what both you and Karen said, is like teaching the young people to pray to God
for discernment.
for the discernment from the Holy Spirit. And one girl, she was fine with one funeral, but the next family funeral, she got all the persecution again. And so she said, now when I go to any family funerals, I just cross myself like a Catholic, and that appeases everybody. Well, she says it does, because then she doesn't have to give the incense,
Right.
but she's showing honor, because the Japanese are respectful enough
Of ritual.
of ritual and Catholicism. So that's what she did. She ended up doing that because...
And for the longest time, I was very judgmental of other Christians. Like, how could you even think about doing that vulnerably? It's like an idol dance.
Because it's a community. It's a community unity thing.
There's so much in Japanese ritual that links the community together. And if you don't participate, you're rejecting that. And you're going to put up a wall between the culture and the
so many
Another
missionaries won't do the
problem
cage.
in Japan is the tradition of Sunday morning church. It came from Europe. It came from the West to have church on Sunday morning.
Right.
And so many churches, including the church that we were in Hiroshima, was like, you got to have it on Sunday morning, and you're sending a message with your witness that you are sacrificing for all these cultural things. You got PTA meetings, sports clubs, clean the park
the
days.
neighborhood.
All these things happen on Sunday morning. And you have to tell your community, I'm not going to participate in all of these community things because I'm going to church instead.
Well,
And there should be I believe, I love that my church in Hiroshima, I really do. But in that one point, I think they're wrong.
well, I have so
think-
many non-Christian friends that work on Sunday. So
There's that
Sunday's
too.
irrelevant to them. Having a Sunday morning church service doesn't mean anything to
We
them.
need to
We need to
variety.
meld a church that is values and takes into account Japanese culture and Japanese practices and Japanese
yes.
ways of thinking. And I think we need to get away from this. Let's build a Western church. I think it would be awesome if a church met in the nighttime, like a Sunday night or a Saturday
That's what
night.
Jesus Cafe does with Noah.
Is it?
Yeah, Saturday night.
That's awesome. And then have make worship songs on Japanese instruments, or have everybody always take their shoes off when they're coming into the church, like that kind of thing. I think that would be awesome if we had a more of a Japanese centered kind of Christianity. And my friend Makiko would be all over that kind of Christianity.
Dan thinks it'd be great if there's a lot of old little Buddhist temples that are closing, and rather than he thinks it'd be cool if churches bought those buildings and kept the architectural style and turned them into churches.
That'd be really cool. I had a friend
That'd be pretty radical.
I had a friend in a gospel concert inside of a temple, and I thought that was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Because
Was that cat?
no, it was a friend down at the prefecture. But I mean, how cool is that? Like
It is cool.
And I'm going to take shamisen lessons inside of a temple. And to show. I mean, it's so the Japanese will tell you they're not religious, but everything they do in life is
religious.
just Shintoism, everything. And they don't know it. And so they'll be like, oh, I'm an atheist, I'm Mushukyo.
Yeah.
But then you're like, yeah, but then you do this, and you go to the shrine, and they're like, and I'll ask them, what's the difference between a shrine and a temple?
And they don't know.
I don't know.
No.
They don't know.
They don't even know the word Shinto. My students have never heard the word Shinto in their lives.
Well, to them it's not a shukyo anyway.
It's a ikikata.
We had this interesting thing in one class as part of a Bible study with non-Christians. And, name all the religions you can. Well, the word shukyo and the word religion are not the same.
They're not.
Even though the class was being conducted in English as part of an English class, they converted it to the word shukyo in their brain, and they gave us a list. They named Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Bai, Hindu, got down to where communism and all kinds of stuff were in there.
But not Shinto.
Not Shinto.
They don't know the word
And
Shinto.
then we stopped. No, they knew the word. But we asked them, well, why not Shinto? Oh, that's not a religion.
Well,
And
they
they explained why.
Yeah.
To them, Shukyo is about teachings for how to relate with people. Shinto has none of that. It's only about appeasing the spirits.
Well,
And ritual.
I remember when I was a new missionary, the older, post World War II missionaries taught us some really wacky things that it's taken me nearly 27 years to wean out of my system. And one thing was, the older missionaries said, don't ever get involved in the keijiban that goes around your neighborhood, because if you have to
Oh, the
pay into
kaidanban?
that, what?
Kaidanban.
Kaidanban, the kaidanban, because you have to pay money, to the community.
And it goes to the shrine.
And it goes to the shrine, but it's like paying NHK.
Yeah.
If you're part of the community,
You pay it.
you pay it. It's not that you believe everything that NHK is doing or believe everything that Shinto is doing. It's like, it's not exactly like taxes, but it's
Yeah,
the
to me
only
it's a
place
tarimai.
the
You
only
should pay
place
it.
you can absent from that is like if you go to a Buddhist funeral, you can get an envelope that says for flowers, so that it doesn't go into the payment for the priest.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's kind of like,
But is there anything really wrong with paying a priest to do a funeral or whatever? I mean, is that against the scriptures?
well, actually, you're paying the priest. You're paying for helping the family pay for the life and the afternoon.
the kaimyu.
The name they get after
Yeah, that
death.
one's a little fuzzy.
Yeah,
but,
that's why paying
but
for flowers is
paying the community
fees.
fee. I think not paying it is insulting.
I think it is too, but that's what the older missionaries taught us 25 years ago. They're like,
And I hear people on Facebook muttering about how to avoid paying NHK too. I don't watch that much TV, but I know that NHK is quality television, and I know it's there when I need it. If I feel an earthquake, I turn on my television. I know that NHK is going to be there for me.
It's the national broadcast.
It's like
It's like PBS.
except that it's because everybody that owns a TV almost is paying into it. It's not like PBS is like on a shoestring budget and really bad. NHK is the best television in the world, I think. Just high quality stuff.
And you can learn a lot about Japanese culture. It's a lot of stuff that she's been talking about by watching these NHK programs. And not that it'll give you the answer.
And I can just give you one more little piece of thing that God taught me too, was about culture. Like 4 years ago, I went to the U.S. on sabbatical to teach at a university in the States about Japan. And everybody in the class was taking the class because they liked manga anime. Yeah. And I had this kind of like, that's not culture. Let me teach you about real culture. Let me teach you about education and food culture and religion and customs. And then after I got back to the States, I did my TED Talk, and once again, Makiko comes to me one day and she's like, you gotta watch this movie. This movie has a Japanese worldview. And it was,
Was it parted?
it was the Ghibli, Sentojiro no Kamikakushi.
Oh, I forget what
Spirited Away.
Spirited Away. Spirited Away. Yeah, that does have
One
it.
of those Studio Ghibli movies, Miyazaki. And I realized I had seen that movie and I had no idea what it meant. I had no idea what the story was about. So I watched it again with Makiko, and she interpreted and explained to me while I was watching it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like the entire worldview of the whole country in one movie.
Well, Naruto has a lot of Japanese.
Naruto,
I haven't seen
Mononoke,
Spirit Away yet. I got to see it.
Naruto's
Mononoke.
really freaky though.
But then I thought, who am I to say what's culture and what's not culture? If I had studied those movies, I would know a lot more about the worldview than I did. I was kind of like, oh, this is just some weird story about what in the heck is all that garbage anyway? And I was just like, I had no idea what was going on. And then when she explained it to me, it's very deep. and it's not just a cartoon. Like anime should never be translated as cartoon
It's not.
or animation even because it's not.
It's not. It's a whole thing of its own.
Is it time to
Did
go?
somebody say
He
animation?
loves animation.
I'm an
That's
anime.
That's it. His anime. Yeah.
But Naruto is a gospel story in and of itself because he took on the curse of
Well,
the.
Anpanman, the guy that wrote Anpanman.
Yeah, I
was
know. That's a little too
Christian.
blunt for me. Naruto is more of a like hidden message.
But you know, then there was that movie, The Departed, that about the whole Buddhist
It
funeral
is 5 after
culture.
3, so it's probably
That was pretty interesting
I haven't
too.
seen.
Oh, it's.
I only watch cartoons.
It won, I think it won an Academy Award.
Anyway, I just want to just challenge you guys, especially you guys who are thinking of coming here as missionaries, is that you first of all, like they shared language. Whatever you have to do, learn the language. Learn the language. It takes years before you're at a level of fluency, before you can share the gospel at a level that you're happy with, before you can get really deep with people.
Oh yeah.
But years, probably I don't know, 7 years, probably 6 years. But once you do get there, it's so fulfilling to have those deep relationships, and also just even if you're struggling with the language, show them, like Roberta said, that you're trying to learn. Show them you want to know their culture. Show them. Don't just talk all the time about what you believe.
be a learner.
Like an active listener, like they talked about this morning at the other one upstairs. They talked about the value of the importance of listening and not always talking. And especially about the culture. And when you're speaking to a Japanese person, ask someone what they believe about, and like ask them about Buddhism, ask them about Shinto. We need to know these things. It's very important for us to understand Buddhism and Shinto and what they believe. And it's very complicated, and they probably don't even know what they believe either. And they're going to be like trying to figure it out along the way as they talk to you. And so just really seek to not bring your Western worldview to this culture, but leave it behind when you come. Bring your Christian worldview and keep that as a foundation of everything, but not your Western worldview. And if you do that, I really think God is going to just open doors that you would never think would be open before. I mean, I have chances to talk to people now that I never would have even thought I had.
But like you said, you have to be so careful because now you're so visible.
Yeah, I have to be careful because I have, like the whole Mikoshi thing. My non-Christian friends were upset with me. My Christian friends were upset with me for doing something. I was like, I can't win. And you know what? That's okay. Do what God wants you to do.
There it is.
Please God. That's all we gotta worry about.
Get it started on
Anyway,
the cool down
thank you
cycle.
for listening. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.